That's right. The big news, I think, of yesterday. Yesterday was a big day because it was the debate day, and it was a kind of boring debate, but Bernie did great. But the more important thing, I think, and the thing that I think is sort of it's to be expected, and I'm sure there's like some sort of reasoning trick you can do to be like, oh, it was expected, so it's not big news, and they're preaching to the choir, like Amber Tamblyn said, which, again, preaching to the choir, this is like a classic Sam Cedar thing that I just steal, but you know who what the choir does? The choir runs the bake sales. The choir gets the word out about all the events. The choir cleans up after service. The choir sets up before service. You know, the choir is the organizers. The choir is the activated voter. And yes, he is preaching to the choir because that's his strategy. Even in this, you know, I'm not expecting Amber Tamblyn to like have read Becky Bond's book, you know, but about distributed organizing. But like, you know, this campaign is running on a different approach than the 2016 campaign was. It's using a different model. I've seen Zaid Jilani, who like people either like love or hate depending on the take. I think he's kind of a zero because I don't think he's had a lot of good takes maybe ever, but especially recently. He's been on this hobby horse about how Elizabeth Warren has more like paid staffers in certain places, and he's like, Bernie isn't taking this seriously because he doesn't have enough of a certain kind of class of staffer that would show up on his like financial records or something. But the point of this campaign and the structural aspect of how they're trying to distribute power is to have more sort of like non-staff volunteer organizers and to give those people more power to spread the message. That's why they have this Burn app, which gives you access to the voter ID access network, the VAN or whatever it's called. That's why this strategy is being employed, and that's why he's raised a bunch of money and maybe hasn't hired a bunch of staffers, because it's just a different approach. It's trying to leverage the 21st century. Like, it's trying to leverage technology. It's trying to leverage new political energy. And I think it's, at the very least, it's a noble experiment. And I think, you know, a campaign like Bernie's is going to have to run a different kind of campaign. And the heart of this is the endorsement of the squad. That's right. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib, and Ilhan Omar all announced that they are endorsing Bernie Sanders. Ilhan Omar had a video that came out this morning that was fantastic. I recommend it. And AOC will be endorsing Bernie in their home state, in their home city of New York. I think they're in the Bronx, which is technically not Bernie's home borough. Whatever, it's fine. I'm going to get on him. I'm sure there's someone who's like, Bernie, like, sure, you got all these, like, dynamic, progressive women of color, but you're not in the right borough. But so why do we think AOC and the squad endorsed Bernie? There's a lot of, you know, there's been some, like, anxiety online about, like, her being nice to Elizabeth Warren, which I always thought was, like, I mean, yeah, she'll be nice. She was playing both sides, I guess, you know, and I think the strategy, as we're seeing now, seeing that she's endorsing Bernie, which makes sense because, I mean, she and Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib all got into politics after Bernie and have explicitly said that his 2016 run and a lot of the organization sort of built up sort of before and after, especially things like Justice Democrats and the DSA, inspired them and empowered them to run. So this is happening. This is the new left bloc of the party that we already knew was there, but it's coalescing in this sort of federal way. And I think that's great. And I'm excited for all the meltdowns that are going to happen. I'm going to try to collect some and do a little bit of that later. You got to give it a few days to really let it all sink in. You know, you got to go through the many stages of grief. I saw denial after denial last night. Marcos Smolitsas was like freaking out for some. Well, he was doing the calm thing where he was like, "Well, endorsements don't really matter. Blah, 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 blah. Endorsements do matter if the person matters, and AOC matters. The squad matters. This is a new frontier in a lot of ways, but it's not. This is the thing that I do not like that people say when they say Twitter is not real life. Because here's the thing. All of this is real life. None of this is fake. In that, here's one thing I do not like. When people say Twitter's not real life. Like, sure, people have a lot of Twitter followers, but they can't, leverage that for anything politically or anything. It's all just basically just Kardashian kind of bot sponsored posts and stuff, and that's just not true anymore. Like the line between real life and online is completely gone. There is no line between real life and online. You should have known this, because online, as we say, it's just some internet thing. It's the media. And we all act like the media matters, but if it's not a newspaper or like a cable news outlet, it's not real? That's bizarre. Most of the stuff that you get in real life media is exactly the same stuff that you get on Twitter. You get it on Twitter first. You get a lot of other bullshit too, and that's part of the problem. We have too much information coming in for our feeble minds. But AOC is out there to leverage sort of a new kind, not new, but to leverage the platforms that she's had. And I have to say, now knowing for sure that she's endorsing Bernie, I'm gonna cut a lot of slack for times that she did some stuff that personally I thought was kind of annoying, or maybe she quoted Ava Perón one time, and she did all this stuff. She kind of played into some stuff with some Warren people. I see you, Max Berger. That I'm not a huge fan of. But the strategy, as was explained to me by some people, and I think is still correct, is that she was, maybe not as much now just because she's declared, she was basically trying to soft pedal some stuff for the libs out there, right? She was just trying to sort of stay within some of the framework, but be just out of the box enough to be like, wow, she's fresh and new, right? And I think people who act like this is just preaching to the choir, which again is actually fine. Even if it was, that's actually fine. There's plenty of precedent for a mobilized space doing really well. Look at the Bolsheviks, And there's so much promise in this, in that these are going to be three dynamic women of color, two of whom are legit describe themselves as socialist or members of a socialist organization, and the other one's Ilhan Omar, who's she's just the best. I love her. This is going to mean there is going to be some grade A, excellent political organizers just out there, just running stuff, making stuff happen, getting media attention, leveraging their platforms, and really making a difference for this campaign. I think this is going to really help Bernie. Now, the reasoning for why they waited until now versus later, I think this all makes sense, especially in the context of Bernie's heart attack. I don't think, in retrospect now, it seems like AOC and the squad were always going to endorse Bernie. It makes sense with their political acumen. Maybe they played nice with Warren because she's not the worst. I mean, maybe you could say that's exactly what I've been doing. Being sort of critical, but also hey, some of these things are good. But there was really no choice for the squad but to endorse Bernie. They know where their base is. They know where the future of the party is. And while maybe you could make a sort of short-term to medium-term case that endorsing Warren would be like a great way to maybe like try to unify the party, but that's really short-sighted. Because if they endorsed Warren and then she lost, they got nothing. And if they endorse Warren and she wins, what do they get? I don't really know what they get from that. They get to be on the winning team. They get to sort of play the same old political game that Warren herself played in 2016 with endorsing Clinton. And they realize, as I think a lot of the left wing who are at least engaged with the Democratic Party, I understand the desire to not want to be engaged with it. You know, that's not my thing. You do you. But they know that it's more important, and this is something that I've been trying to hammer on, and I think is a decent message to give to your sort of more progressive Warren fans who might be voting for Warren, that even if you love Elizabeth Warren and you think she's got a good platform and you think she's really competent and you actually put stock in her being a Harvard law professor, I really don't. But, you know, if you do, that's great. But if you want to make sure that Elizabeth Warren has the right platform, if she is the nominee, and that we can enforce that she sticks with her commitments and we can put pressure on a, you know, progressive liberal, we can look back in history and see that really the only way to do that is by pushing on the left and by pushing for more than maybe even what you expect is possible. Look at FDR. FDR, his first few years wasn't even that great. He wasn't really pushing for the large structural change that he created with enough pressure from the labor movement and from, you know, a still active socialist parties across the country. I mean, this was near the time when the CPUSA was out, you know, trying to organize sharecroppers in Mississippi. You know, like, there was a socialist parties and there was activity on the real left then. And that activity absolutely helped make FDR the best president of the 20th century at the very least. I mean, it's kind of it's not great. And even he had a lot of problems, you know, but I think the best we can expect from Elizabeth Warren is for her to be a la FDR. And the way that we make sure that that happens is you don't support her and you support the more left-wing challenger to put leverage and to put pressure. And that's exactly what AOC and the squad are doing. And that's exactly what we should do. And this means we might get someone even more left. And that's great. But even if we lose, which we're not going to, I promise. Please, phone bank, please do stuff. Even if we lose, this is the beginning of actually really building this infrastructure and putting it together and like building this system that can absolutely change at least federal politics. And that's a huge deal.